put everyone on. Okay, there we go. So my name is Brianna Malore. I'm the Chief of Community Engagement, and I'm super excited to be kicking this meeting off tonight with some of my fellow colleagues and folks working on the White Stadium plan. Before we get into the agenda, we want to make sure everyone knows that today we have translation opportunities for Spanish, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole. To get translation set up, make sure you go to the horizontal control bar at the bottom of your screen, and then you can click on the global icon that says interpretation. Then when you click the icon, you can then select the language that you want to hear translations in, and then you will have access to the meeting in that language. First, I want to give an opportunity to the Spanish interpreter to interpret that.
Los intérpretes. Buenas noches para todos, bienvenidos a esta reunión. Tenemos interpretación en español esta noche. Si quieren interpretación en español, por favor, aprieten el globo terráqueo que está en la parte de abajo y luego ahí ustedes pueden escoger el idioma que quieren. Hay interpretación en español, en haitiano criolo y caboverdiano criolo. Si quieren en español, por favor, aprieten el canal de español. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Then we'll go to the Haitian Creole interpreter.
Bonsoir tout le monde, moi di nou bienvenue dans réunion ça. Et nous gagnons un parti en bas, nous cliquer sur lui, nous après côté nous avons choisi langue que nous voulons tendre mais réunion. Nous gagnons espagnol, nous gagnons haïtien créole et puis nous gagnons capverdien. Ça dit pour que lien on va attendre tout ça qu'a dit dans réunion. Merci.
And then Cape Verdean Creole.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Boa noite, tudo alguém. Pedro Neolino tem interpretação simultânea. Vamos conseguir selecionar aquele ano, está bem na parte inferior do nosso ecrã, e nós está selecionando aquele ícone de globo que está lá. Depois aquele ano está calcando a interpretação e seleciona a língua que nós queremos. Desnote não tem espanhol, não tem crioulo haitiano e crioulo de Cabo Verde. Se nós queremos crioulo de Cabo Verde, nós está calca Cabo Verde em crioulo e aquele ano está seleciona. Obrigada e boa noite. Thank you.
Thank you. So next slide. Okay, so tonight's meeting is held in fulfillment of the City of Boston's 2023's tree ordinance, which prior to the removal of any tree defined as a city property requires 4 key things. I'm going to mention those. One is a tree survey, including a condition assessments performed by a certified arborist. This is currently posted on our website. The next thing is the public marking of all trees proposed for removal, a tree protection plan submitted to the city's tree warden for review. And then, of course, tonight's meeting, the public tree meeting, which provides an opportunity for public comment and for, folks to talk about proposed tree impacts. I want to take a moment to honor the deep legacy of advocates and leaders who have tirelessly championed this preservation of green space. Their dedication has shaped the city and ensured that each project centered our green space and environmental stewardship to make sure the community is rooted in well-being. As someone that really grew up in Dorchester and really understands the deep impacts of decisions like this, it's important that we have this space tonight to understand the impacts on our wildlife and green space. So as we go into the agenda, our lineup of speakers today include leaders from various departments who have worked hard to ensure this project has balance and preserves our community benefits. So we'll hear from De'Aaron Irish, who is the Chief of Operation, Liza, Interim Park Commissioner, Diana, who is the Deputy Chief of Urban Design, Sam, our Senior Landscape Architect, JP Charbonneau, Associate Principal at Crawley Cotwell Landscape Architect, and is also a contractor for BPS in the scoping area. As we go through the agenda, as outlined, these folks will be talking about the project views, the canopy, and there'll be also opportunity at the end to answer any questions and add any comment towards the end. And that's all I have. Passing off to
Good
Dion.
evening.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm De'Aaron Irish, the city's Chief of Operations. I'll first provide you with an overview of why the city is renovating White Stadium. Whether you've been following this project from the beginning or are new to the conversation, it is important to know that this project seeks to deliver a generational investment in a facility to serve our BPS students and community members. Next slide. White Stadium is being reimagined as a state-of-the-art multi-sport complex that expands Boston Public Schools' access to premier facilities. This transformation reflects our city's unwavering commitment to accessible, sustainable, and community-centered design. Here are a few renderings of what the newly renovated stadium would look like. This vision is becoming a reality thanks to the new funding from the City of Boston and the Boston Unity Soccer Partners. Together, we are delivering a stadium and surrounding pathways that align with recommendations from the Franklin Park Action Plan, while meeting the programmatic needs BPS has identified as essential. Both cherished outdoor spaces and much-needed indoor facilities. In addition to the redesign, we have secured ongoing annual lease payments and a professional maintenance partner to ensure that the site remains in excellent condition for decades to come. The Franklin Park Action Plan has been central to our design and implementation strategy, ensuring that this project pushes forward its key recommendations. Next slide. One of the most exciting aspects of this project is the significant commitments that we've secured from our partners that include job, career, and mentorship opportunities to support youths, adults seeking new employment and economic pathways, an annual $500,000 community benefit funds to be allocated with input from the newly established White Stadium Neighborhood Council, sustainable design and operations, making White Stadium one of only 3 carbon neutral stadiums in the country, with thoughtful improvements to safety, lighting, and noise reduction in the surrounding area. BUSP is also, thanks to the recommendation from the Franklin Park Coalition, committed to a surcharge on tickets to fund recommendations in the action plan. These commitments reflect our dedication to creating a stadium that is for BPS and serves as a model for community benefits and ecological responsibility, in addition to also ensuring that there's increased access for community to the stadium 15 hours a day rather than the current 8-hour weekday schedule. I'll stop there and turn it over to Liza.
Great. Thank you, Chief Irish. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liza Meyer. I'm Chief Landscape Architect for the Parks Department and also serving as Interim Commissioner. And I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you all for attending. We're going to hear a lot of information tonight about tree health, tree removals, and tree replacement. And I want to take a moment to put this in the context of the recommendations of the Franklin Park Action Plan. The action plan is our guiding document for how to understand and make improvements to the landscape of Franklin Park. And this slide represents a number of action plan recommendations, including invasive species management, opening views, creating better conditions for natural woodland regeneration, as well as strategically establishing the next generation of canopy trees. And once invasive species are removed, the plan emphasizes replanting native vegetation and filling large gaps in the canopy with carefully selected trees. So later in this meeting, my colleague Sam Valentine will explain how this approach has guided the approach to the tree canopy around the stadium site. 2 key challenges identified in the plan are the lack of species diversity and the prevalence of invasive plants. The action plan also speaks to the need for regenerating the woodlands to ensure they continue to provide critical ecological benefits, such as cooling effects for the surrounding neighborhoods. So these recommendations are part of the approach and thinking that has gone into the proposed landscape improvements around the White Stadium project and will be used to inform expanded replanting efforts over the coming years. Next slide. Finally, I want to highlight the historic design intent of the Playstead and the woodlands surrounding it and how this historic design compares to the current landscape condition. Generous sightlines across the expanse of the Playstead were central to the original design intent, with the edges of the space bordered by structured groupings of trees. Yet over time, we can see that many more trees have self-propagated into this space due to decades of reduced management and limited investment. And what's resulted in is a barrier around the edge of the stadium, which contributes to the sense of the stadium being cut off from the rest of the park. So while the work at White Stadium is only one piece of the larger set of landscape management needs in the park, the significant investments from this project will address long deferred conditions and set us on a path of deep investment in tree health and canopy regeneration for the next 50 to 100 years. So I'm going to pass it now to Diana.
Thank you so much, Liza. So really excited to be here with you tonight. I'm Diana Fernandez, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Urban Design with the Planning Department. And I first just want to start by thanking everyone who's joining us here tonight. I think so much of the architectural and landscape design work that we've done has really been a product of back and forth feedback between community members, sharing insights on how we can do better to address this project in the context of this historic park and amenities. So thank you so much for that. If we advance to the sort of next slide here, I really do want to highlight that there's been an incredible amount of work on the architectural front to harmonize and consolidate the building program based on some of this feedback. So back in July of 2023, the city's design was really focused on meeting key programmatic elements that were required by the Boston Public Schools. These were based on direct input from BPS students, staff, and coaches that really focused on a sort of an essential sense of athletics programming here that really doesn't exist within the district. However, at this stage of the design, as you can see by the rendering on the top left, we had not fully integrated this particular architectural gesture into Franklin Park's natural and historic context. And in February of 2024, based on the feedback we've received along the way, we pushed the design to preserve the views to the Playstead, to maintain those critical view corridors, and also to remove the Grove building that had been proposed adjacent towards the overlook. And it led to the image you see here on the right, which is an example of sort of where we are today. That's really focused on this sort of winged building concept that allows us to sort of contain the building program and create a sort of 360 building that is fully integrated into the park landscape. Next slide. A lot of this architectural reworking was really focused on understanding how we right-size the stadium to meet the programmatic requirements while minimizing tree removals. This is something that, as a landscape architect myself, we, parsed through every single piece of square footage here to ensure that it was absolutely necessary in order to meet and reduce the number of impacts on the site. The design itself, as I mentioned earlier, provides for an 8-lane track and field, meeting our high school and professional standards, the indoor facilities for the BPS program, as well as amenities that will be associated with the National Women's Soccer League game days. And one of the key pieces here to highlight as well is that we were also taking a look at the preservation of some of these key landscape features, some of these sort of character defining elements, such as a pudding stone, and how those outcroppings and the overlook sort of work together as an overall composition. So what you're seeing here is that along the way, we've sort of been sort of tinkering with the design to ensure that it's a project that serves both the community and is also a model for responsible design. Next slide. And so, after completing our inventory of trees on the site, we began to refine impact. And as you can see here in the plan, and as is on our website, a lot of the impact is associated with the sort of periphery or edges of the existing building envelope itself. There are a series of trees that are growing along fences, that are growing within some of the stadium walls themselves. And you can see here how a lot of those removals are associated with where that sort of building program and those sort of site conditions exist. So, you know, one of the sort of key elements that we want to highlight is everything you see sort of highlighted in green here. We are preserving over 120 trees of the trees that were surveyed on the site. And this really speaks to our efforts of protecting some of that legacy canopy that was part of the original Olmsted design, while meeting some of our objectives to open up view sheds, remove invasives, and restore this canopy into the future. If we go to the next slide, you know, unfortunately, due to some of this building program, and as I mentioned, some of these sort of structural conditions on site, there are some removals that are unavoidable. And in these cases, we wanted to sort of walk you through in detail around how we prioritized and minimized impact to that tree canopy. So the first set of removals are grouped as trees that have been identified as being in poor condition or dead, dying, or diseased. These are the sort of placard you see on the right with the red little tree is what you may see on site today. And what I want to note here is that these are trees that, for various reasons, either through lack of maintenance in this area or disease, are in decaying conditions and not safe. So those are trees that have been determined as removals, and we have about 35 trees in that category. We also have trees in this category that are focused on invasive and non-native species. So these are trees such as sort of Tree of Heaven that have been these sort of groupings and pockets that exist in and around the stadium and are really important for us to continue to manage as we think about the restoration of the canopy. And we have about 40 trees in this category. And then there are trees on this site, as I mentioned, and you can see here in this diagram that are located adjacent to either fences or walls that present sort of structural defects in the sort of trees with the new building program coming online. And we have about 40 of those trees. And my colleague Sam is going to walk us through in more detail where some of these conditions exist. And these, again, are trees that are sometimes even, growing through fences in many of these conditions. And then we have a sort of set of trees here that are in fair health or in good health that, unfortunately, due to the positioning and the width of the track and field program, are trees that we unfortunately will lose. And we have about 11 trees that are in fair condition and about 19 that are in good health. And we'll walk you through those specific trees in the next section of this presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sam, who's going to walk us through these categories in greater detail.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Valentine. I'm Senior Landscape Architect with the Planning Department, and I'm also a certified arborist. As Diana explained, the project team has significantly redesigned the stadium in order to maximize preservations while fulfilling the needs of the BPS students and Boston Unity soccer team. I want to note that this portion of the presentation is a requirement of the city's new tree protection ordinance. Next slide. The first category of removals are those trees that have grown tightly against the stadium's concrete walls or through the chain link fences. There are a total of 40 tree removals that share this condition, and their species include black tupelo, black cherry, swamp white oak, pin oak, and black oak. The photos show some of the scarring and included bark and other conditions that is present in these trees, including the pin oak and the black tupelo that you see at left and bottom. On the right, we see an unfortunately common condition around White Stadium. This is an example of the mature pin oaks that are growing directly against the perimeter walls. Most of these trees are constrained from growing to their natural maturity due to the location of the walls, which compromises their structure. Furthermore, they have an imbalanced critical root zone, which leaves them susceptible to wind and storm damage in the coming years. Next slide. Again, we've scrutinized the preservation potential for every tree in the project, but not all can be saved while enabling this rehabilitation. There are 30 trees to be removed that were assessed in either good or fair condition. A few of those species here, we have the sugar maple, the gray birch, white ash, black cherry, more pin oaks, and northern red oak. The impacts to these trees will be due to a variety of construction factors. There will be new modern utilities and infrastructure run to the stadium, accessible pathways and fire truck access, and the valuable new programmatic spaces that Dion and Diana have described. This is a good time to explain one nuance of the removals that we're presenting tonight. Some of the removals, not those pictured here, but some that you may see placarded out on site, may be recognizable as shrubs or young trees. This is because the tree protection ordinance includes small trees as protected. So you may see some with trunk diameters as little as 3 inches. And those are also included in the numbers we're presenting tonight. Next slide. This next category includes the 40 non-native and invasive trees to be removed for this project. The invasive species include Norway maple, tree of heaven, a myrrh cork tree, and black locust. The non-native are limited to the yews that you'll see around the outer walls of the stadium. A note here, so as not to confuse, for those who are familiar with the tree protection ordinance, it does explicitly exclude invasive species from protection, but for the benefit of clear communication with the community, we're including those tonight in our presentation and in our numbers. Next slide. And the final category of removals are those that are dead, dying, diseased. That is terminology from the ordinance, or those that were assessed in poor condition or dead condition by Bartlett, the consulting arborist. Sorry, one second. Okay. The trees that are in this category have wounds at the root flare. They may have branch dieback that's being observed, girdling roots, and fungal infections. These trees will continue to decline and they will pose emerging hazards to the safety of park users. Some of the species affected include red maple, sugar maple, paper birch, gray birch, red mulberry, pin oak, sumac, and little leaf linden. Next slide. While tree removals are an important part of this process, so are our protection efforts. There are really 2 key parts to the protection plan, fencing and arborist review. In terms of the arborist review, it's important to stress that while an arborist has been involved in the design process, there will also be arborists contracted for the construction. The fencing areas that you see highlighted in yellow on the right, we've kind of isolated what you could consider safe zones. Any work that would occur within these, any type of construction work would have to be reviewed by the arborist. And it physically, as you can see on the left in the image, it physically restricts the ability for any vehicles to enter and limits the type of activities. So essentially protecting the trees and their roots from physical harm or chemical harm, such as mixing paints. And these protection measures, they go beyond the standard practices. We are prioritizing the health and longevity of the remaining trees, protecting their critical root zones. And the next slide explains where we are in the process. So just holding the image of the fence in your mind for a second, you can see we are here in the center of the slide. Tree protection fencing will be erected before the first removals begin, and it will remain in place until all construction activities are concluded. And we'll just pause on this slide for a second. This is representative of typical construction projects, and ours is no exception. Moving from what we've shown previously, the inventory conditions and assessment, which is available on the website, identifying for protection and removal, and marking for removal, which we've done. The placards are visible around the stadium. And next up will be tree removals, construction, and then the new plantings and ongoing maintenance. Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to JP, the consulting landscape architect.
Thanks, Sam. Good evening. My name is Jean-Paul Charbonneau, but I go by JP. I am an associate principal with Crowley Cottrell, the landscape architects for the city and the BPS side of the White Stadium project, also known as the East Side or the East Team. In the interest of time and to minimize the number of handoffs to different speakers, I will be speaking about the landscape design for the entire project, including for the Boston Unity side or the West Side. The East and West teams are working together as partners to ensure this project feels cohesive and unified. Though the primary purpose of this meeting is to fully disclose and report impacts and removals to existing trees, we would also like to use this opportunity to highlight the many benefits and improvements enabled by this project and this partnership. Next slide. This drawing illustrates all the new trees proposed for the area around the stadium. New trees are shown in the dark green circles. Existing trees, which will remain and which will be protected, are shown as outlines with white circle centers. Altogether, this project will be planting over 65 new trees. New trees will be mixed species, primarily oak and other large canopy trees, and follow the guidelines of the action plan. New trees will be arranged in informal groupings around the stadium to provide shade, comfort, and scale and visual connections around the playstead. Some, but not all of the new trees are currently staked in the ground. Next slide. These next images are illustrations of the future condition. This image is from the west side of the stadium near the current side entrance. In the foreground is our largest tree, the pin oak, with new trees proposed and wrapping around the west side. Next slide. This image is from the playstead fields looking towards the stadium from the south. New and existing trees will combine to heal the impacts from construction and will, we believe, stitch and strengthen the connections to the park. Next slide. In addition to new trees, we are proposing to add more biodiversity to this part of Franklin Park, where currently there is only lawn and trees. We are proposing a variety of plant types for the understory, low mow fescue grasses and other perennials to transition to the surrounding woodlands, native grasses and flowering meadow in targeted and sunny areas, and drifts or small clusters of shrubs for the shadier areas to the north. And of course, lawn, which will provide clear sightlines in areas for pedestrian paths and circulation. Next slide. This image is from the west side looking south, with the overlook in the distance and on our right. This illustrates the look and feel of this new understory planting. When combined with the new trees, the benefits of a more varied landscape will be multiple. For people, greater seasonal and visual interest. For flora and fauna, a healthier, more diverse, and more resilient plant community. With this greater planting complexity and ambition, the partnership is committed to providing the utmost care and maintenance for all proposed plants, and will help and supplement the management responsibilities of the Boston Parks Department. Next slide. But the full story of the improvements do not end here. This project and this partnership has committed to contributing funds for a tree bank for over 500 trees for all of Franklin Park, of which this stadium project is one part. Next slide. The remaining trees are to be planted in a period of 5 to 10 years at the discretion of the Boston Parks Department and the future executive director of Franklin Park, to be used where and when they see fit. So in conclusion, we recognize the dramatic impacts this project will have to some of the trees around the stadium. We do not take the gravity of this situation or our responsibility lightly. Though the removals of some of these trees are necessary to enable the expansion and improvements to the stadium, this project and this partnership will enable us to plant our next generation of trees to ensure that this park and this landscape will thrive and endure and be enjoyed by many human generations to come. Thank you. I now hand it back to Chief Irish.
Thank you, John Paul. So as Diana affirmed earlier, we have committed to not starting demolition, including tree removals, until a lease is signed. We're confident that all community commitments are in place, and once a few final reviews are completed, the lease will be signed, allowing us to move forward. We'll move forward with demolition and pre-construction activities, such as removing hazardous materials from the stadium. You can find these community commitments outlined in the BPDA board memo, which is linked on the project page. In the meantime, we have begun planning for construction management to ensure transparency and minimal disruption during this phase. Slide. Here's what you can expect in terms of the construction timeline. Winter 2024 to early spring 2025 demolition phase. Spring 2025 to winter 2026 construction phase. Spring/summer 2026 construction is expected to be complete. Before demolition begins, we'll launch a construction management page on the White Stadium project site. This page will feature a live camera feed for real-time updates, a sign-up option for bi-weekly email updates on progress, a list of upcoming events and community meetings related to Franklin Park. You'll also notice intentional construction signage around the area to keep everyone informed, whether they're familiar with the project or new to the site. As always, if you have questions or concerns during construction, you can reach out to the team directly at whitestadium@boston.gov. Next slide. Throughout the demolition and construction phases, we'll continue to provide community updates. This will be a critical time to implement commitments outlined in the legal agreements, including establishing the neighborhood council, reaching supplier diversity goals. During this period, tree protection fencing will be installed, and we'll further develop partnerships to repurpose removed wood. For example, Madison Park Voc Tech carpentry class will use some of the materials for educational purposes. The zoo enclosures will incorporate new wood and stumps, and some material will be thoughtfully integrated into the new stadium structure itself. These efforts reflect our commitments to honoring the legacy of the trees and ensuring their impact lives on in meaningful ways. I'll pass it back to Diana.
Thank you so much, Chief. And with that, we just want to thank everyone for your time this afternoon. And we'd like to open it up for questions. So if you could raise your hand, I'll call on folks as they appear on my screen. And just a reminder, we'll have 2 minutes and then make time for responses. So the first hand I see up is Derek Evans. Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, can you come back to me? Sorry, go to someone else if you don't mind, but come back to me, please.
No worries at all. Okay, the next person I see on my screen here is Mitchell. Do you mind unmuting?
Hi there. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of many aspects of the this concept of this stadium, and there's no need for me to go into any of those details. We're here to talk about trees. But my question is this: as I understand it, the city is now broke. The mayor was not able to get the state to allow her to ask the businesses to kick in. So now the homeowners are, and I'm wondering if the mayor is convinced to put her $50 million back in her pocket, will we be able to stop this this demolition of the trees in time, or will the trees come down instantly as soon as this thing is inked? And when the mayor decides she can't afford this stadium anymore, are we then going to have all the destruction of the trees?
Thank you, Mitchell, for your question. I do want to note here that as is in accordance with our Parks Commission vote, no removal of the trees will occur until a signed lease has been completed. So, this is again in alignment with making sure that we are in a position to absolutely execute this public-private partnership and be able to meet the goals of this project. Mike, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
No, thanks, Dan. I think you stated it well. I'm Mike Firestone, the city's chief of policy. Appreciate everyone being here tonight.
Thank you. Let's see. The next hand I see here is Louis Salisa. Could you unmute?
Thank you for the opportunity. 3 questions. First question is, where is the comprehensive plan of the area which is to be demolished in the demolition plan? We as a community have not seen a comprehensive plan of what is to go up and what is to be actually to be demolished. So we need to see that. We also need to see a site plan as to what type of activities can take place in the area during demolition and construction. That means what is the public access and movement in and around the park and around the area during construction. And finally, do we have now an idea of what this budget is going to be and what this is going to cost us, since at no time in the last year and a half did we get any information to know that this project, which is only for half a stadium, is going to cost us almost $100 million.
Thank you so much, Louis, for your questions. I'm going to try to hit each of them, and then I might call on my colleagues, Chief Irish and Mike Firestone, to help me answer some of these questions. So as it relates to plans, construction management plans for the project itself in terms of when demolition will occur, how do we ensure public access will be retained? That is something that we're working on actively in partnership with our colleagues in the Parks Department to ensure that we are providing access. When those plans are finalized, as Dan mentioned in his presentation, we will share those publicly on our website, as well as share those through emails that are sent to those that have subscribed. And we hope to, as construction gets closer here, to have another opportunity to update the public on what the plans are and allow for additional questions on that construction management plan. As it relates to the budget itself, we understand costs have gone up. That is very much a product as well of being able to respond to the redesign of the stadium itself. So the sort of estimated $50 million budget that had been allocated was a reflection of the plans. And I wonder if maybe we can pull up the sort of site plan of that sort of February of 2023 concept that was much more of this sort of rectangular volume. And as we made changes to sort of consolidate the footprint, to make this more of a 360 building, we've increased costs, and also through a lot of the feedback around some of the sort of stormwater pathway improvements that were necessary. We've, again, all of those elements have brought us to this location, in addition to just rising costs in construction. So with that, would love to hand it to Chief Irish to see if there's anything else I've missed there.
No, thanks, Dan. You actually covered it really well. This is based on what we're delivering for BPS, based on the design changes and just overall escalation that we're seeing across projects. This project, based on what we're delivering, falls in line with what we're seeing for projects of a similar nature.
Thank you. Let's see, the next hand I see up here is, oh, I'm sorry, Louis, was there?
I had a minute and 5 seconds left on my question, and so it didn't really answer the question, because the third question is, what is the operating plan and what is this going to look like doing construction and doing demolition in terms of public access and movement in and around the area? But in terms of not seeing any comprehensive plan and not knowing in the cost, how do we as a community buy in or tie into this when you don't have comprehensive plans?
Thank you, Louis, and I'm sorry I missed that portion of your question. So Liza, maybe you can help me answer some of this. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're still in the process of sort of finalizing the construction management plan, as noted. We want to make sure that we're thinking comprehensively about access to the site, how this, as Sam sort of walked through, how the tree protection, fencing works with mobilization, and also how this works from a transportation standpoint with access into and out of the site. So Les, I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to add there.
I think, yeah, I'll add that it is a priority that we maintain public access around this portion of the park throughout construction, and do so in a safe way, and keep the construction vehicle routes and impacts as limited as possible. So we're working through that with the contractor, to understand, you know, what they are proposing for access, and then we can refine it to make sure that the park impacts are minimized. And then once we have something that seems like it's the best approach, yes, that will be shared, and there will be a lot of signage and clarity within the park as well, so that people know where they can go without needing to worry about being in conflict with construction vehicles.
Thank you, Liza. Melissa, I see you have your hand up. Could you unmute?
Hi, thank you. My name is Melissa Brown, and I'm with the Trees as a Public Good Network. We're a statewide pro-forestation advocacy organization, and I'm here at the request of our Boston members. The plan to remove more than 35 trees, is the ones that are dead and diseased, is extremely problematic. And the lack of attention to the size of trees being removed is also scientifically problematic. Science shows that the largest trees are doing the most work in terms of reducing heat, removing particle air pollutants, and reducing flooding. And yet there's no distinction between where you're talking about removing a tree that's 30 inches in diameter at breast height versus one that's 5 inches. A great deal more attention should be paid to that, and also to the complete inadequacy of the plan to replant. The climate science work by people like Professor William Mumma, who is a Nobel Prize winning climate scientist, shows that we need over 400 saplings to replace the ecological services provided by one mature oak tree. So the 500 trees you're talking about planting will offset 1 1/4 of the oak trees that you are cutting down. And you are talking about cutting 120 trees that are mostly non-native, inconvenient, or in good health. We strongly argue that you should not be cutting down the invasives in this context. In a lawn area, they are not at risk of spreading to other areas. And the trees that are in the fencing may look ugly, but obviously they've lasted this long. So there needs to be a lot more attention paid to which trees you're doing and why. So my two questions are, how are you prioritizing or not the size of the tree that you're cutting down so that you don't cut the largest trees? And the second question is, what do you intend to do to offset the negative public health impacts of the 120 trees that you're cutting down that cannot possibly be offset in terms of air quality and heat retention by 500 trees? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and get this answer started and then kick it over to Sam Valentine and JP, who can answer this in more detail. There is a lot of information we posted on our website with regards to the surveys done by Bartlett that identify each of these trees by locations, by condition, and also their diameter at breast height, as well as other physical attributes. So you can find a lot of that information online. In addition to that, I think we've worked diligently to ensure that although there are removals associated with this project, we are, through this tree bank, setting up the next generation of trees that will create the canopy for Franklin Park overall. This is the largest investment in tree planting since the park was created, and we see this as a transformational opportunity to address some of the ecological concerns with the overgrowth of invasives within the park and restore that ecological health. But I'll hand it to Sam and JP, who can maybe add some additional detail here.
Yes, and thank you for the questions, Melissa. I do understand that looking at the slides, it may not be clear the priority that the huge priority we did put on the largest of the trees. So in the diagrams the sequence of diagrams that Diana showed, our targets in those or the points around which we oriented were the largest trees, trying to preserve all that we could of the trees that were not considered dead, dying, or diseased. To your point about invasives, I do recognize, and even within the city, we struggle with what is the value of invasives. The urban forest plan, for example, does value invasives, but the tree ordinance does not protect invasives. An example of why invasives can be of such great risk because of their fast growth and their weak wood can be seen right now on the east side of the stadium, where an ailanthus tree has lost something like an 8-inch or 10-inch caliper branch. If a person had been sitting or standing under that, they would be harmed. These are concerns we have about invasive trees in general, and we are very proud of the promise that 500 native trees, climate adaptive trees, have to offer in Franklin Park. I don't know if JP, if you want to add anything in there. I guess I will say one more thing about the trees growing through the chain link fence. These are trees that we tree by tree inspected, trying to figure out those that could be protected. There are some trees being preserved that are in and next to the chain link fence, but it is our opinion that when a tree grows through the chain link fence, it suffers from included bark. And for those who know, included bark causes structural concerns, much like the ailanthus that can be seen with the large limb loss on the right side of this, on the east side of the stadium.
Thank you
The
so
only
much.
other thing that I would add is that we are always trying to balance the space and needs of people also and the building. So it's a delicate balance to get it right. And we hope that we have achieved this. And we recognize that the loss of the trees is dramatic, but we are setting ourselves up for future longevity and a landscape that will endure.
Thank you, JP. C. Kaliga, do you mind unmuting?
All right. Hello. I'm here. I applaud Melissa Brown. I am from Roxbury, currently live on the funky side near Franklin Park side of Jamaica Plain. I've been an RN in Boston for over 47 years. And what you're saying is a lot of bunk. Melissa's right. I'm going to ask a question and then answer it. How many years does it take to grow an 80-year-old tree? You know how many years? 4 generations. So everybody at this meeting will not reap any of the health benefits of any of the trees that you're planning to plant, nor will probably our children. And I'm going to tell you, and plus you're going to be paving over green space, at least 2 acres, to do this unwieldy project, which is costing taxpayers so much money to do irreparable damage to the jewel of the emerald necklace. This park is used primarily by the people that live around it. And many of them are from communities of color, Dorchester, Roxbury. And guess what? The health disparities in those communities are known to all of us. Or if they're not known, I can send you articles. Okay, so we're talking about lung diseases and mental health and cancer and all kinds of things. And parks are public health. How most of the people I know from Dorchester, Hyde Park, Mattapan, Roxbury, and my side of JP, the majority, especially the communities of color, are opposed to this project. How in heck can you proceed with this project, especially taking us hardworking people's taxes when there is an alternative to maybe moving them with the revs into Everett? And it'll still be accessible to Boston people to have a wonderful professional women's soccer team, but not decimating our park. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Kaliga, for your comments. I do think that, you know, we're working really hard to ensure that we're balancing all these needs, and appreciate your thoughtful engagement throughout this process. Brittany, do you mind unmuting? I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely echo Melissa's comments. But to add to that, just because a tree doesn't grow to its full potential, is that I don't see the problem. I mean, you know, the underlying message of a lot of these decisions about what trees can get cut and not is kind of disturbing. And frankly, every time I show the picture you guys have on the website of that tree growing to the chain link fence, every time I show it to people, they're like totally in awe of that tree. And I feel like this is something, just even symbolically, it's a beautiful thing to see a wild tree that, you know, is growing this way. But and then also dead, dying trees. They actually have a purpose in nature, and they're very important for many insects and animals that rely on dead trees and not living trees. I understand there's, like, you know, dangers, but I feel like once a tree is designated as dying, it could, you know, keep an eye on it, prune it, whatever. And also I wasn't clear on why non-native species exactly have to be removed, like that I mean, Melissa made the point about some of the fallacy of having to remove invasives, period, all the time. You don't, but anyway, so yeah, what about tree management with some of these things and not destroying these important trees that may not be, I mean, this isn't a shopping mall, it's a park, you know, and not everything is going to be manicured, and it shouldn't be. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for those comments. I think, as my colleague Sam mentioned earlier, I think there's been a lot of considerations here around the balance of public safety, of folks using the park, and the lack of maintenance that has led to some of these trees ending up in these conditions. I do agree with you. It's, you know, amazing to see trees even survive in such dire conditions. And I think our goals here through this project is to bring much needed resource and restoration to this part of the park that can ensure that these trees thrive into the future. And as noted, we're doing everything we can to preserve as many of those trees as we can. I'm gonna take the next hand here. Cleve Duggins, do you mind unmuting?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to go through a few things. I have a question here, and I'll ask the question first, and then maybe you can get to it. But I just kind of want to make a case for it. I'm sure it's kind of come up in a few of the comments, and maybe perhaps other people have read, like Shirley Lung's recent piece in the Globe about calling to kind of consolidate the two stadiums. I'm a daily park user and a big fan of the park, but also someone who's done some landscape design myself on both personal and professional basis. And I just wanted to take maybe a note with some of what I guess I might call greenwashing, and I'll try to point these out very quickly. But the question I want to ask in the end is, if the park is scaled back to the original blueprint, meaning if, for instance, the second stadium or whatever, the two stadiums get combined, there's a lot of fear in the neighborhood that this park that's been allowed to go derelict for a lot of years will lose any interest from the mayor and the city in terms of doing any of the things that are needed, many of which are the things you're citing. It's often seen as one or the other, like, we got to, allow the stadium. So I'll leave with that question, but let me just call out a few things. The first one that's easy enough is there's often a lot of citing of like Olmsted's vision and aligning to it. And it's just so problematic. Olmsted, of course, cared a lot about the park. He had a lot to say about that specific site, the open sight lines, which I believe Liza Meyer commented on, was true when all spectation on the site was from the overlook. And, the only single building Olmsted ever designed was actually at the overlook. And it was a very indiscreet building specifically for sports, for spectation. Of course, the whole lower part of the park, which is now just the golf course, which was like the open part, has been, taken out of public use. Anyway, as has already been cited, that, non-native species, trees like Norway maples in particular. I live in Roxbury near the corner of the park. I mean, if you take away Norway maples, there's not much shade tree in the neighborhood. And, for what it's worth, they've been here a century and a half, which is, probably longer than the Norwegian people have been, or my people, the Irish or whatever. So at what point is like non-native, problematic as a term? We often see photos of like the large pin oak with heart rot that's 5 feet in diameter on the east side of the stadium. That tree is a huge, beautiful tree. I absolutely agree it's got heart rot, but it doesn't have any damage seemingly to the cambium, which is the living part. All old trees die from the inside out.
I'm sorry, Pete, I just have to be fair to everyone. You are over your time at this point.
Okay, well.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to my colleague here, Mike Firestone, to speak specifically to your note around the consolidation of the stadiums and specifically the investments that the city is putting forward here.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll note that we received a letter from many of the commenters, in a similar vein yesterday. The reason to pursue this partnership has been to deliver a beautiful new and much needed home for BPS athletics. We recognize that, many of the commenters and those on the call, don't agree with the scope of the project, but as a matter of kind of programming, BPS needs to be able to use to run a athletics program, a footprint that is not, even if the site were usable today, even if it were ADA accessible, which it is not, even if it had functional utilities, which it does not, even if it had functional heating and cooling systems, which it does not, proper locker rooms, indoor amenities to complement the stadium field itself, the track itself, and the surrounding fields, which are used by BPS athletics and park users. The purpose has been to deliver programming that benefits the Boston Public Schools student athletes from across the city, as Chief Irish alluded to, and this is a mechanism to achieve that. And that is why the city has pursued this project. We agree that professional soccer teams can play in different places and they don't need to be in any one place. But the reason the city has pursued this partnership, leasing the West Grandstand and the adjacent area, was to deliver the home for BPS athletics.
Thank you, Mike. And then I'm going to kick it to Sam, Pete, to sort of answer your question on the invasives.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a little rigor behind the conversation we're having about invasives and non-natives. Just to clarify, as is available online and in the slides, the only non-natives that we are removing are the yews, those evergreen, essentially overgrown shrubs. Most people know a yew as a shrub, not a tree, that are on the outer walls of the stadium. And every tree that we have called invasive, or that the arborist has called invasive as well, this is defined by the state. So if you go to the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, that is a state definition of over 200 plants Norway maple is on there, Atlantis is on there, et cetera. So we are not being arbitrary. We are being very cautious about what we call invasive.
Thank you, Sam. And the next hand I see up here is Sarah Friedman. Can you unmute, please? Let's see.
There, I think I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank
So,
you.
thank you. I was going to refer to the tree replacement slide by Bob Leverett, but Melissa Brown did an excellent job with that. So I'm going to take what's left of my time to pick up on what Pete Duggins, is that the right name? That we might have a moment here to just take a breath, not just Shirley Leung's article, but Jim and Marjorie were asking the mayor at issue. Sue O'Connell and Corey Smith, they're all saying, wow, you know, are you going to reconsider? And what I would love to challenge you all is, isn't there a way to get the goals, a wonderful stadium for BPS, maybe even a maintenance contract, maybe even mentoring, without having to do this dramatic expansion? And if there could be a shared stadium with alliances, it could be a really amazing outcome and not lose 140 plus trees. It's like we have an opportunity here. Let's not be, you know, heels dug in, and see what really makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your comment. I'm going to kick it back to Mike again to respond to your question.
Sarah, you are always a thoughtful and committed advocate for park space and public uses, and we, the city, believe very deeply, although we have a difference of perspective with some of the folks who have commented, that our goal here is to deliver a facility that meets the needs of a modern Boston Public Schools athletics facility, and that also creates public access and amenities for park users. And the city has pursued a partnership in order to achieve that. The city remains, this project has changed significantly in response to public feedback. The design that you've reviewed is significantly different than the design as presented, let's say, 12 months ago. And I suspect that this project will continue to be refined as it continues to advance. And we appreciate how passionate people are about the project, including those who don't align with the city's perspective.
Thank you, Mike. And the next hand I see up is Ralph Walton. Could you unmute, please?
Good evening. One thing that I've been trying to locate on the illustrations is there's a huge oak tree, maybe about 12-foot circumference on the Seaver Street side of the arena, and I'm not sure whether that's gonna be inside or outside of the widened arena. I don't know what's gonna happen to that, but I'm interested. It would have been a mature tree when Olmsted was planning the park, so it's hundreds of years. I see that you're intending to plant 500 trees in a 500-acre park. So there will be trees that are separated by thousands of feet in this 500 tree planting. Is this just going to be to introduce newly climate appropriate trees to the park, or just to put back the trees that you'll be taking out of this one site?
Thank you so much, Ralph, for those questions. I'm going to kick it over to Sam to answer the first part of your question with regards to tree number 16, and then we'll go to Liza to sort of answer your question as it relates to how we imagine using the tree bank and those 500 trees.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. It's always dangerous to assume, but I do think we all know the largest tree on the east side is tree number 16. It's a pin oak. It has something like a 6-foot tall wound on the south side. This is a tree that we fully agree is likely of the Olmsted era, but it is also a tree that is past its maturity. If you stand at the base of this tree, you can see that actually the majority of the large branches have been pruned back or self-pruned over the last few years. As a reminder, if a branch is self-pruning, that means it's dropping off, possibly onto a park user. A branch of that size can cause irreparable harm to a person. This is not a tree that we take at all lightly in removing. We do encourage everyone to visit the site and walk fully 360 degrees around the tree. And I do want to just give a chance, if that's not the tree we're talking about, please put it in the chat. But I think on to Liza, and as a reminder, parks will have full discretion over the trees that are not planted within the project. Parks will have full discretion, and they've already had very exciting conversations about climate adaptive species.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So the question, if I have it right, is so how does this tree bank work? If you have 500 trees, are they just going to be scattered about the park, or is there more intention behind how this will be used? There are a lot of recommendations in the Franklin Park Action Plan around how we can improve the health of the woodlands in the park, how we can add trees in places where we've lost trees over time and haven't replanted, how we can be proactive about establishing the next generation of canopy trees in the park. There's a lot of very mature trees in the park, and because of the invasive understory, we aren't necessarily getting the natural regeneration that we need in order to have a healthy woodland ecosystem. So as we make investments in managing the landscape better, the tree bank will allow us to replant, especially behind invasive removals. You want to make sure you plant, or else those invasives will reestablish. So I don't know if I'm getting at the question, but I think that it's an opportunity for us to start to move the needle on the needs for the landscape and the canopy in the park, and have funding that we can access for implementing those recommendations within the action plan over the next 10 years. It won't all happen at once. It'll happen incrementally over time.
It seems like a drop in the bucket, though.
Thank you, Ralph, for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and take the next hand here. Susan, could you unmute, please?
Yeah, thank you. I have two quick questions and then a comment. The questions, and I think I've just missed this information, or maybe I'm looking for a little bit more, but they are, what steps remain before the lease is signed? And then how many new trees are going to be planted in the stadium area? So those are the questions, and I'll just go ahead and make my comment before the responses. You know, the changes in the tree canopy that we're talking about here are not happening in a vacuum. We're looking at this in the context of this project that will have huge benefit for our Boston Public School kids and the community at large. And I think is really, really important. I think that it should be a high priority, and you know, it's going to provide public health benefit. So to me, the it's unfortunate that 30 healthy or fairly healthy trees will be removed from this project, but I'm comfortable with the mitigation, the new trees that are going to be planted in place, and it will take time for them to grow. But in this specific situation, this specific context, I support this stadium project. I don't think that, the stadium is there now. There's a stadium there now. The stadium is there for organized events, organized activities. And I don't see how, even if the city were to change course now and go to Everett, or the soccer team would go to Everett, or the city would, renovate the stadium on its own. The trees, many of the trees that have been talked about tonight growing into the walls and the fences.
I'm sorry, Susan, I do have to cut you off here just because we want to be fair to everybody. Thank you for your comments on answering your first question here around what's next before the lease. As stated in our timeline, we wanted to have the tree meeting today in accordance with the tree ordinance. What our commitments to the Parks Commission were that before any demolition work occurs on the site, we would have a signed lease. So this is the last step before demolition activity would occur and before a lease signing would occur. So I think we're in the final stages of finalizing deal points on the lease negotiations, and then that would allow us to begin demolition in earnest. There is some pre-demolition work that will be occurring on site. So it is about sort of removing harmful elements such as asbestos within some of the grandstands themselves, and that is to safely prepare those buildings for future demolition, as was noted in the presentation, which will begin in earnest in the new year. I also want to note that your question here about the tree bank, our commitments are that we are planting 67 of the over 500 trees in day one. And then the rest of those trees, as Liza noted, will be planted over the next 10 years. And that's by design to ensure that we're thinking about that successional canopy. We're not just doing it all at once, and that we are targeting those trees in areas of the park that need restoration in paths, as Liza noted, that were identified in the Franklin Park Action Plan, that are looking for sort of ecological restoration. So there's a lot of opportunity, and also, other capital projects that parks may want to take on within the park, where we, have resources and a pot of money that is not only funding the planting of the trees, but also a 2-year maintenance regimen and period to ensure the establishment of those trees. The next hand I see up here is Derek. I see your hand is up. Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Did you call on Derek?
Yes, Derek Evans. Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I guess I have a comment and then maybe a question. So I'm a residential taxpayer here in Boston. I'm also a local historian. In the 90s and into the early 2000s, I was a Boston public school teacher. I'm a preservationist, and I worked my way through Boston College undergrad and graduate school for an arborist in Chestnut Hill. Did a lot of work on public and private homestead properties. Since this project began, some of the folks on this call on different sides of the issue know that I have been at times, deeply confused and frustrated or even angered by what I have construed as doublespeak and contradictions and, excessive speed of process and lack of transparency, and touching on things that are important, I think, to all of us, including Olmsted's legacy, racial equity, climate resiliency, prioritizing school children first, landmark status, and preservation, of course, transportation plan and so on, and decades of community neglect and decades of non-existent or insufficient community processes. And I guess I just want to say that it was really only just this week And I guess I owe a thanks to Mayor Wu and Mr. Firestone and Mr. Irish and others here about what appears to be sort of this emergent transparency for once, particularly around the issue of this not being a $50 million contribution, but a 91 million and possibly more, for which the city is committed to cover regardless. And also something the mayor said a couple of times in the last couple of days, that the women on this who have invested and who will play on this professional soccer team, quote unquote, deserve a stadium of their own. So, thank the mayor on my behalf for finally being, transparent and clear and to the point about where all of this is headed. The women have, I'm not finished. Thank you.
We are trying to be fair of everyone's time. I'm sorry. Could you just unmute and finish your comment there, and we'll make sure we respond to your question. Let's see, Derek, can you unmute again or no? So I do wonder if Chief Irish would like to speak specifically, I think, to the remarks here with regards to the costs.
Thanks, Dana. I mean, to reiterate what you said earlier on, we've been transparent all along with estimates. With the first design that we showed, that was the estimate. Based on a lot of thoughtful feedback, we've made a lot of changes to this design, and that has also increased the cost. So this is the cost that we are at now. And just for reference, like City Hall Plaza was something that was about $80 million just for reference. So like we're seeing these type of costs. And I would also just remind folks that this is not just bleachers. There's a lot going on within this complex that delivers a lot of things that our students are going to really benefit from, as well as BPS Athletics Department, and be just a hub for the entire district.
Great.
Thank you so much, Chief Irish. Let's see, the next hand I see here is TJ. TJ, could you unmute, please?
Hi there. I'm a daily user of Franklin Park. I primarily enter the Walnut Avenue entrance that has, in my opinion, been targeted to handle the largest share of shuttle buses, delivery trucks, and those sorts of things. Currently right there, there's plenty of space for cars to enter, turn around, and exit on paved areas while still having a barrier of mature trees and grass between the driving area and the very wide sidewalks along the larger forested tree areas. None of the previous presentations, flyover animations, or anything have actually shown the plan for paving and tree removal or preservation of the wide sidewalks that is used daily with people with strollers, dogs, exercising, those sorts of things, entering from that Walnut Ave entrance. And it's quite a distance from the actual stadium proposed. In your presentation tonight, the beginning overhead shot, it showed teal or light blue highlighting of an opening of the canopy along that pathway coming directly off Walnut Ave, but then did not show any of those trees being removed on later slides. So my question is, can you please show us what is being removed or recommended to be removed just to pave a larger turnaround for shuttles and delivery trucks? And are any of the 40 healthy trees being removed in that area? And is the wide sidewalk used by the park users that has been a buffer of mature trees between people walking and the cars that are there now being preserved? Thank you.
Thank you so much, TJ, for that. I do wonder if maybe Anshir Luke, you could pull up the plan, and then JP or Sam, if you could walk us through the extents of the removals. One thing I do want to know, TJ, while we pull that up, is that we are not expanding the sort of hard surfaces associated with turnarounds for shuttles or things like that. We are sort of keeping to the existing sort of carriageway dimensions that exist on site there today. And some of the improvements that we discussed focus on connecting to pathway systems around the park. So you can see here that the majority of these trees being cited for removal are mostly adjacent to those stadium walls and fences. And as you can see here in the plan, only extend out when trees are you know, in poor condition or dead, dying, or disease where they're highlighted as removals. But Sam or JP, please feel free to chime in here.
Thank you. So as I understand, the request is to give a little bit of a tour around the removals. So I do agree it's helpful to see this on a plan. But this is kind of a manifestation of the categories that we talked about earlier. So the color coding you can see starting at the north, there is a poor condition or dead, dying, disease tree in the center of where Pierpont and Plaisted meet. And then as you can see, arcing will move clockwise around the stadium. From the north gates, there is a, and I should remark this plan is available online. There is an invasive or actually a non-native tree, the yew, that's located near the gates. And then we have a series of the trees that are of structural concern, which are those growing against the existing walls, the perimeter walls of the stadium. If you look off to the right, almost to Plaisted Road, you can see a large tree with an orange dot. If you go a little farther north, yep. If you look at the plan that we have available at a closer scale, that's actually what you would recognize as a tree when you look at that is remaining. But we are removing many small pioneer species that are growing at the base of that large tree. Moving down, following the proposed wall, you can see there are some of those unfortunate removals. We just glazed over, and we shouldn't have tree number 16, which is located just south of that area of clearing that I mentioned. You can see green trees that are marked with greens at the center. There's two there. One is located near the Roxbury pudding stone, and that's a sugar maple. And then as you move farther south, you can see we get back into trees that are either invasive, such as a stand of Ailanthus. And then as you get closer to the fence, you get a stand of black locust. So you can kind of follow that around. Hopefully the color coding is helping. But one distinction, I know this point has been made, is the trees that you see that the entire circle is filled with green. Those are all trees to be preserved. And any kind of zoning that you see in green, those are areas where trees kind of within those general areas will not be removed. So down to the southeast, along the eastern fence line, there are two trees that both landscape architecture teams have worked incredibly hard to preserve. You can see the kind of Olmstedian fire lane and walking path is actually threaded between those two large oaks, which is a victory for bringing that access in and the grading that's required for it while not removing or impacting those trees. And you can see similarly in the south fence, there's a large oak, likewise, that is preserved just south of the proposed grove lawn. And then I don't know if I should continue. I'm happy to continue elaborating. There is a little bit of thinning of invasives and small trees on the slope of the overlook that you can see outside of the kind of green safe zone. There are trees grown into the fence line as you go farther north. Many of those, just to show the rigor of the tree ordinance, those are trees that were tagged in a horizontal position. They are sumac trees that have fallen over. They fell over prior to being tagged and surveyed. They are still presented as trees in today's presentation. So that stand of red that you see there on the left side. And as you go farther north, we hit a stand of pin oak that are shown. They're kind of nestled against the concrete walls. So again, their long-term survivability is threatened. And then there's one red dot on the left side. That is a sugar maple that we had hoped to keep until we looked more closely at the Bartlett conditions assessment. That tree is not threatened by the development, but it is in poor condition, and it poses an emerging hazard due to several observed conditions, one of which is a wound at the stem. If you look to the north of the kind of hump of the west side, facade, you can see those two large trees. We actually are very excited about the conditions of those trees. They currently do experience car traffic and parking under them. And in the proposed plan, there will be decompaction of the soil and protection against further vehicular trespass. So those large trees are preserved. And then you can see going north following Pierpont Road, a larger green safe zone. There are, of course, some of those same pin oaks that are growing against the concrete wall. There's a dead, dying, diseased dogwood. There's a Norway maple that is in poor condition. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions. I know that was a lot.
Thank you so much, Sam. And let's see, the next hand I see up is Dot. Dot, could you unmute, please?
Hi, so I think I know what my neighbor was asking about. It's the section that is right off of Walnut Ave along the old stone wall. So I don't think that those are a part of the scope, but Sam, I'll let you comment on that because that does make a nice barrier between Walnut Avenue and the stadium. It's like that forestry section. There's a lot of fallen down trees. Also, Sam, thank you so much for your work on all of the trees. I know it's hard to make the choice of what to keep and what to cut. But I watch so many of those limbs come down all the time, and it's loud and it's scary, and I just don't want it to fall on somebody. I had a question about the access. I'm glad that there's a commitment to keep access as much as you can around construction. And I know that the Parks Department has learned some great lessons from the Pathway project from last spring, where there was not it was slow to get information out, but then gradually it came. And then the most recent post-Thanksgiving cross-country meet, there were some initial, I don't know what you call them, your vendors are starting to come out. That ran really smoothly. And so there's people who don't come to the park regularly, and they knew where they needed to be. And there were signage about what was closed off and what was opened. So thank you for all that messaging. And then the last thing was, in this, this idea that we're going to be working on the park for roughly 18 months, is there opportunities to do more pop-up things that would invite people in, but also preserve access? And so this summer, Liza, what was really popular and I was so happy to see it was the Alianza series. So more things like that. And I know that New York Mechanics works on these kind of projects. Maybe there's something that's already that they're getting ready to launch, that maybe they think about Franklin Park for these things. They had that great.
I do unfortunately have to cut you off just to be fair to everyone, and we're hitting time here. I do want to go ahead and just kick it to Sam here to answer your question about the specific area. Maybe we didn't catch that in our sort of walk around. And then while we pull that plan up, I do want to answer your question here around the sort of construction management plan. And I think that is something that we hope to bring back to you all in a future public meeting where we can walk you through how some of that fencing will be up. What we shared with you today was the tree protection fencing, but we want to have a more thorough conversation, and we're refining those plans as we speak. So we hope to be back to you all to share some of that information. I think, Liza, you can chime in here, but I think we are using best practices around what we've learned through other construction projects throughout the site, and just ensuring that given this particular location as a magnet destination within Franklin Park, we're allowing for connections through. Sam, if you don't mind, maybe we can pull up the plan and make sure we're providing clarity on the questions related to that sort of northern area of the park.
Yeah, could we see the slide? I'll start talking without the slide. But there is a connective drive between Pierpont and Walnut. And on that drive, there is a significant tree that we want to. Thank you, Anshi. There's a significant tree that we should point out. You can actually see it highlighted just left of the O in Pierpont on the left side. Yep. That is a tree that is a 40-inch pin oak. It's tree 1301. That is a tree that is being protected as part of this project. So there are no, as you can see, there are no colorful dots to the left, page left of Pierpont Road. There's kind of a stand of, or a thicket, if you will, of trees that climbs up that hill to the Roxbury Pudding Stone. You can see page bottom left. All of those trees are outside the project zone, and outside means they are also protected from construction impacts. So just to be clear, that one that is circled next to the O in Pierpont, that one will have tree protection fencing, and the rest of the area will be outside the construction perimeter. Just a note about the stone wall: we are not altering what we understand to be an Olmsted era stone wall, but we are configuring that sidewalk both during construction so that there is pedestrian access and for the long term.
Thank you, Sam. I do want to note that we're over time now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of questions together, and then we'll try to answer them in sequence. So the next hand I see up is Jamil.
Yes.
Sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Yeah, that's correct. Jamil Graham. Thank you very much for taking my question, and I appreciate all of the work that you guys are doing toward bridging the communication. However, my predominant concerns regarding removing the trees is I feel like it's not fully addressing the fact that to go ahead and remove the trees is in effect to completely and forever change the ambience of the entire park. And what concerns me also is that to put that incredible stadium right there, it's not what you're showing us, it's what you're not showing us. That where are those people going to park? How are these people going to come in and enjoy? How is it possible that the park can maintain the green space ambience that it holds such integrity for at this point, with such a pile of concrete there in the middle? And I'm living in Forest Hills, and this goes with the other end of the park, the plan to remove the Shattuck and put this state-of-the-art, we're big on state-of-the-art things, right, of drug treatment plan at the other end of the park. So I'm not seeing any consistency or real concern about any preserving of legacy or green space, or even concern for the people. I feel like you're all saying, okay, well, when this is happening and it's all happening, but the fact is there's a lawsuit pending in March. There are some really important questions about what this vision is that somebody has come up with that we haven't been included in. And so I feel very distressed by the perceived, and I'm not saying this personally, but it's like an arrogance. Oh, we're having this program. We've got all our trees marked. We're going to take them all down. It's like, well, that just doesn't feel inclusive or respectful.
Well,
So
thank you so much for your comments. We're just trying to be mindful of time here. Thank you for those remarks. I'm taking notes, so we'll circle back on a response here. And I'm going to take the next hand here. Dr. Jean McGuire, can you please unmute?
Dr. McGuire.
All right.
Go ahead.
I really feel that, being a minister's daughter, I would like to quote from Robert Frost, who was our poet and who loved the trees and everything about them. And he said, I'd like to go away from Earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. Not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. And I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down. That would be good, both going and coming back. One could be worse and do worse than be a swinger of birches. I live 4 blocks from the corner of Franklin Park. I have walked there. I'm 93 now. I know it better than anybody who's listening to it. I lived here. And to take down a tree, which takes so long to grow, so much water, so much care, to be so cavalier about it is an affront to those of us who paid taxes all our life. All our life we paid to support whatever it takes to maintain our trees, our school statement, which once was only for the boys, but now we do have girls in schools. We need to protect any tree that's in that park that isn't damaged or falling down. It takes too long for the earth to replace the green cover that we call trees and grass and bushes. And when you fly into Boston, all of you, when you come into the airport, look down and you can see Franklin Park, the great, beautiful green swath. That's ours forever. And I don't want to see anything that's not natural take place there. You all think you know what you're doing, but you don't. We have love here for this park and its trees and its grass and its beautiful spot of green in the middle of Boston. It's far better than the Boston Common and the Boston Garden. So let's give it the respect that this beautiful green swath of trees and grass and beauty stays like it is. I'm 4 blocks from there, been walking there all my life. I'm 93 now. Most of you don't know what you're talking about. It's not yours. You don't have the feel for it. We love it. Don't touch it. Do not.
Thank you so much for your comments. We're trying to be mindful of everyone's time here, but thank you so much, Dr. G. McGuire. I'm going to go ahead and take the next hand here. Seth Davis, could you please unmute?
Yes. Hello. I am an abutter to the park and a frequent user, as well as a BPS parent. And from both of those positions, I am actually excited about the potential of this project to, in my opinion, improve the park and improve the access to facilities for students. And I do want to thank the team here involved. To the comment that there has not been a lot of communication, and I've been at dozens of meetings and heard the city respond to our feedback, and this project is dramatically different, and it is now much more responsive to the Franklin Park Action Plan. And I think that's a testament to the willingness of the city and the soccer team to engage with the community and try to do a project that tries to balance both minimizing impact to the environment and to the park and maximizing benefit to the communities and the school district. And I guess my question is, is this a model we can expect in terms of, the attention to things like carbon neutral buildings and accessibility and care with regards to tree on future city projects? And are there any projects in the works that are moving along through the same process?
Thank you so much, Seth, for your comment. We'll come back to your questions. I promise we're taking down notes. We just want to get through all the hands here. Livy, could you unmute, please?
Thank you. So I'm here to speak for the trees along with everyone else. I have the same profound concerns that so many other people have spoken so movingly about. The concept of planting 500 trees, as Melissa Brown said early on, is really meaningless when you're talking about the fact that you're replacing trees that have been there for 50 years or 80 years or whatever. It takes 80 years to replace an 80-year-old tree, and as Professor Muma said, it takes hundreds of saplings to replace all the benefits that a big tree provides. And the general concern that's been expressed about putting a whole bunch of concrete, no matter what the benefit of that is, into a green space, eating away at the green space in Boston is a terrible thing for Boston to be doing. We should be magnifying, we should be increasing our green space, not reducing it by building things, especially in a beautiful park like Franklin Park. I absolutely endorse what the concern that people have expressed. I realize this project is a juggernaut, but I think it's fundamentally wrong.
Thank you so much, Libby, for your comment. Again, we're taking down notes on your questions. The next hand, I just want to note here that we are at time. So the last hand I'm going to take is I see Karen, Gabrielle, Aline, John, Judith, and Stacy. You will be our last hands here. So in that order, I'm going to go ahead and call on Karen. Karen, can you please unmute?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is Karen Monty Brodek from the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. I have the incredible pleasure and honor to serve as the executive director for the nonprofit Emerald Necklace Conservancy that had the pleasure actually of pruning that very large, beautiful oak tree in our last round of tree pruning in 2020. At that time, the arborist did not say that it needed to come down. And we are trying to sustain that tree's life. And I understand that these projects are challenging. But what I want to say is the reason that unfortunately many community members in the Conservancy felt like we had to take legal action is that the city is not following Article 97 or other rules that allow and review alternatives. This community and the city did not look at alternatives that would have been smaller or stayed within the footprint. I believe that a renovation of the stadium, including an 8-lane track, could have happened in such a way that would have existed more within the footprint that would not have required this many trees to be removed. And as a variety of stadium experts show, and the analysis we have done, you could build a stadium for less than 91 million or more. I believe in community self-determination. It's something that we studied really hard during Olmsted Now and our efforts to focus on those sorts of things. And I'm very, very proud to stand by the community leaders that I get the honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with, including Dr. Jean McGuire and others. I do want to also say that I feel like it is very disingenuous to say the cost of the project have increased as a result of the community feedback, because actually what I think happened is the community feedback actually eliminated a building, and the idea that the costs have increased $41 million between June and then most recently as a result of that is very, very difficult and hard to hear that is what we're saying are these costs. I think ultimately at the beginning of this project, the community was not involved in the key decision making. And these are not, in fact, this is not in fact a project that is in line with the Franklin Park Action Plan. The Franklin Park Action Plan, as stated in the letter signed by this mayor.
Karen, I'm so sorry, but we're just trying to keep everybody to 2 minutes here. We are taking notes and we'll make sure we come back to your question. The next hand I see up is Gabrielle. Could you unmute, please?
Hi. Yes, I'm Gabrielle. I'm a former Boston Public School teacher. And my comment is that our tax dollars should be used for the benefit of the people who are paying the taxes. To use even $1 of our tax money for a private company, it to me is profoundly unethical and corrupt. There should be no place for us paying for a private for-profit company to build a stadium that we won't even have any use of it, except for a vague promise that the kids can use it. I haven't heard any specifics about when, how much, what time of year the kids can use it. Can the community hold events there? This is pure unadulterated corruption, as well as all the environmental issues that were brought up. And it's a terrible waste of our tax dollars. Our schools are falling apart. The federal government is threatening to demolish the Department of Education, which means that we may get far less monies for to run our schools. The schools are profoundly in danger. Public education is profoundly in danger. Why isn't the city dealing with that to really help the children? All these vague promises, oh, the children will benefit. It's smoke and mirrors. This is a for-profit corporation. They're going to want to have as many venues as possible to to make more money. And it's a complete hoax. We shouldn't be spending a single dollar on this. And I believe most of the community agrees with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. The next hand I see up here is Eileen. Could you unmute, please?
Hi, let me see if I can turn on my video. Okay, I just want to express my opinion that I am, like many others, totally against this project. And I agree with what's the benefit to BPS kids? Most of the football games happen on the weekend, and they're not going to be able to use the stadium on the weekend, if I understand that correctly, if I'm wrong correctly. But what I understand is that 20 weekends out of the year, we can't use it. The community that lives here cannot use the stadium because it's going to be used by a for-profit team, right? So, like, I feel like it's all this. It's for the kid. That's totally disingenuous. And in terms of the green space, the increase in pollution will be immense from like transporting 11,000 people to this stadium. They're all going to be, for the most part, from out of town. And when the BPS has their events at the stadium, where they're all local, we are people who live here. Maybe some of the people come to see their the teams that are from other school districts. They will drive in there, but it's not 11,000 people. Okay, so if you want to comment on how you really think it's going to benefit BPS kids and how it's really going to disrupt like the neighborhood, the surrounding areas with all the traffic, transporting 11,000 people, go ahead and comment. But thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much, Eileen, for your comment. The next hand I see up is John. John, can you please unmute?
Diana, sorry. So I'm so sorry, Diana. But I know we're trying to get through every comment. Maybe just because there have been 2 comments in a row about public access and BPS use, it's just worth saying a word or two, just at least for the record, about the plan as articulated in the BPDA board memo. So while I agree with anyone who says that I agree not every sort of document has been finalized in this proposed partnership, but all of the commitments that were articulated in the board memo are legally binding. And so maybe it's just worth, Eileen, to your point and to the previous speaker's point, just a quick reminder about some of the basic contours of sort of how this arrangement is structured. So first off, the Boston Public Schools controls White Stadium, has controlled White Stadium in its entirety for 75 years, right? Under this arrangement, that does not change. The Boston Public Schools continues to control the stadium and how it is scheduled. Under the RFP proposal that was accepted by the city to begin the discussions about a lease, the city agreed that as part of this partnership and the significant capital investment and ongoing commitment to maintain and operate the stadium for BPS in terms of carrying the expense of doing so, that the team would have the right to license the field and the East Grandstand for up to 20 soccer games per year and 1 practice to be held on a weekday, during school hours on the week of that of that game. The city retains control, so we would expect much greater use of the stadium than is currently available for the Boston Public Schools on a much better maintained athletic facility with new amenities, including indoor spaces that do not exist right now, and so cannot facilitate the kind of maximal use of the facility that has been envisioned and designed with the Boston Public Schools Athletics Department and with BPS coaches. So there's a lot more to unpack there, and we have other meetings that I think have been publicly posted that get into these sort of public use issues. But I will say to those who characterize this as just sort of, the way that this is structured starts from the premise that the Boston Public Schools needs a renovated facility. And this is an area where Karen Monty Brodek and the city agree. White Stadium very much needs a renovation. There is a disagreement about the best way to achieve that renovation for the Boston Public Schools. But the idea here is that this is an ambitious undertaking. It has eluded decades of administrations, which is why the stadium is in such terrible shape and currently does not meet the needs of the Boston Public Schools. So that's the sort of basic theory here, Eileen, and welcome and invite you to review the materials that have been posted on this topic on the city's website for the project.
Thank you, Mike. The next hand I see up is John. Could you unmute, please?
Thank you. I want to talk about process. We've only had one public meeting ever. It was on March 25th at the Monroe Trotter School. That every other one is a sham where they're, people get to speak 2 minutes at the end after a long. Since the community has been so successfully cut off, I would like to yield the remainder of my time, my remaining 95 seconds, to Derek Evans to finish the question which you did not allow him to answer.
Yeah, hi, am I on?
We can hear you, Derek.
Thank you. This question can be answered by anyone, preferably Mr. Firestone or Mr. Irish, but again, why not save the city and taxpayers like myself some money and also solve the unresolved parking and transportation and high school football problem, etc., by just cutting down all of the trees and shrubs near the site to accommodate cars, buses, and Ubers with a multi-level parking garage like the Logan Central Parking Facility, which would still give the professional women's soccer team a quote-unquote stadium of their own. It would fix the transportation issues that have not been resolved or communicated. And most of all, perhaps, it would allow the predominantly Black and brown BPS football players and teams a professional grade grass field to use from late November or Thanksgiving through Christmas. Thank you. Would someone answer?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was on mute. Mike, do you want to take that one? Or should I take the last hand? I think we have Judith and Stacy, and then we can answer all the questions. Okay, let's see. Judith, could you unmute, please?
Sure. Thank you for the time. I'm going to repeat what a few people have said, but I think it's quite important that you all hear this, especially Mike Firestone. I think it is very disingenuous of you. Every time you talk about cutting down trees and expanding the footprint of this stadium, you talk about the needs of BPS. And it is very, very disingenuous to do that. You should also share openly what expansion is needed to outfit a public private for-profit stadium. And it's really important that you do that. So get that sorted out. Secondly, I would really like to see what a plan for a stadium for just BPS looks like. A smaller footprint, just serving the BPS. I believe we could do that for $50 to $91 million. And I believe every taxpayer on this call would be willing to foot the bill for a stadium dedicated to the Boston public school system in the footprint that exists. And finally, I will just say that it is sacrilege to be putting a for-profit private use stadium in a public park of the incredible importance of Franklin Park. It is just, you should all really, really think twice about what you're doing in your professional roles associated with this project.
Thank you so much, Judith, for that comment. And I think our last hand here is Stacy. Stacy, could you please unmute?
Yep. Thank you. And as always, thank you to everyone who from the community and city who is staying in these long meetings tonight. I know that it's tough on a Thursday night during the holiday season. For context, I'm here tonight as someone who lives near Franklin Park and near White Stadium, and as someone who I think is maybe the only person who was a student, a child who actually benefited from a public-private partnership with a professional sports team and was able to use facilities because of that as a child. And so I'm here tonight really supportive of all of the BPS students who I've personally heard be so excited about this project and the unique thing that happens when professional sports engage with public schools. And separately, my understanding based on other meetings that I have attended is that the needs of BPS athletics and students necessitates a footprint that will impact trees. And so focusing really directly on the trees conversation tonight, I have two clarifying questions. One may necessitate further discussion, but I know that in the Franklin Park Master Plan, there were areas where we had both identified the need to remove invasive species and to include additional plantings. And so I'm curious if this 500 trees is inclusive or in addition to those already identified assets in the plan, just out of curiosity. And then separately, I'm curious if there has been discussion about the size of the trees that will be planted. As arborists know, there's a wide range of sizes of trees that can be planted. I actually think the Seaport has some good examples of larger trees that sort of weathered their first years a little more easily with less maintenance. And so I'm just curious about where that conversation is at. Thank you so much for all the time tonight.
Thank you, Stacy, for your comments. So I'm going to work counter clockwise here and just take the last questions and kind of work our way back to the ones that we had in the beginning. So just on your question here about the Franklin Park Action Plan, I'll get this one started and then maybe Liza, you can help me answer this particular one. So our intention is that the trees that are in the tree bank will be used in areas identified in the Franklin Park Action Plan as areas where additional ecological restoration is needed. So I think the goal is really to use this tree bank to address some of those recommendations in the action plan, but also have this as a sort of flexible bank that could be used for other capital projects or other community projects that may come about within the stadiums, within the park for use. But Liza, let me know if that's correct.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to add. I think that's right. And this will be over time, and we'll be engaging with people over whichever projects move forward to add new trees to the park. So we'll have future conversations about that.
And then for your portion of the question around the size of the trees planted, JP, could you please tell us a little bit about of the 67 trees that we're proposing to plant on day one, what the sizes are, and I know that there's variation there that we can highlight.
The new trees around the stadium are proposed to be in the 3.5 to 4 inch caliber range, which is not a sapling. It's somewhere between a sapling and a full mature tree. And that gives it the best chance to acclimate itself to the environment and also can grow to a significant size. And as for in terms of the 500 trees, I think that is part of the lease negotiations. There will be a size determined for those 500.
And one thing I do want to note too is, Stacy, in some of the areas of the park, like especially where we have new pathways, we are looking at sort of larger caliper sized trees there, just so that we can get those shade benefits a little bit earlier on in the life of the tree, even though some of those saplings will probably catch up in the same amount of time. So the sort of question before that was really focused on this being a BPS stadium and a desire to understand a little bit more of the BPS program. And I wonder if Chief Irish could share a little bit about some of the program that is being considered within the BPS side of the project here.
Thanks, Diana. And I'm not sure if Avery, as Bill's on, he can certainly add to this, but I do want to reinforce what Chief Firestone said earlier, that the BPS remains the owner of this facility. The team actually becomes like more of a tenant relationship, and they have a maximum of 20 games per year. In terms of BPS uses, I know the athletic department is excited about having multiple sports being able to have time in White Stadium. It'll be sort of like a shared facility for all schools in the district and for multiple sports, including football.
Avery, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I think good evening, everybody, and thanks for taking the time tonight. Just to follow up on Chief Irish, I think everything he said is accurate, right? The White Stadium has always been a hub of activity for Boston Public Schools. I think in the time that I've been here and in the most recent years, it's been more challenging to do that, right? The age of the stadium, the amenities in the stadium are not meeting the needs of our students and what we're trying to provide. This renovated stadium, the renovated space will provide not only the new field and the confidence that comes with that, but updated track and field space. We're looking to add strength and conditioning space to complement students' desires to learn their sports and to get better and to have spaces where they can come and have positive experiences. So this renovation really transitions the stadium from a 3-season facility to a full year-round facility that has athletic purposes, has community purposes, obviously introduces the ability for us to form a new relationship with a women's pro soccer team. But at the end of the day, it puts us in a position where our students, our teams, our coaches can have a stadium that is reliable, that's there, that they have access to on a regular basis, and that they can, aspire to be anything that they want in.
Thank you, Avery. And then a question we got was about a different location and the status of the lawsuit. So I'm going to kick this one over to Mike Firestone and Sammy, who can provide a little bit more information, I think, on the benefits we shared earlier around what this project delivers that a location in another stadium doesn't.
Sammy, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to just give a quick, update on the status of the lawsuit. I'll say that although it is pending, it's important to note that the case was filed in February of this year, and there was already a decision by the Superior Court judge on a preliminary injunction motion by the plaintiffs that on both the Article 97 arguments and whether or not the project is in compliance with the will of George Robert White, the Superior Court made a finding that the plaintiffs in that case are unlikely to succeed on the merits of the case. So although the case is pending, the city's already received a favorable legal decision in that case, and we are currently in the fact-finding phase of that case. I think, as it was pointed out earlier today, there's a trial date set in March of this year, and the city is looking forward to a swift and successful disposition of that case in March.
Thank you, Sammy. And then we did hear a little bit about the benefits, a question about the benefits of BPS and taxpayer dollars here. And I do think that we answered some of those questions with Chief Irish's response and Avery's response there. But if you do have additional questions, please feel free to email the whitestadium@boston.gov for more. We did get a question here about these large.
Can I jump in one
sorry.
second?
Yes.
There's a couple of notes I just wanted to make sure that I covered. One is that when we talked about the 20 games, please don't assume that they're all weekends. When you look at the NWSL schedule, all games are not on Saturdays. There's some on Sundays, and there are even some weekday games. So I would not assume that it's all 20, and that's up to 20 games. That also includes playoffs, just so we reinforce that. The other thing I wanted to make sure we mention in terms of the benefits to the partnership that we haven't talked about yet is the ongoing operation and maintenance costs, which is pretty significant for White Stadium, even as it currently exists, and the new one will certainly also require quite an investment just to keep it in the condition that it is, and as well as the long-term contracting opportunities that will be generated through this partnership over the course of a 30-year lease.
Thank you so much, Chief Irish. We also did get a question around the applicability of Article 97 review. And I wonder if, Sammy, you can speak to this specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. I'm happy to. And again, I point people to the Superior Court decision back in March on this, where there was an express finding that the city's project and the stadium parcel are not subject to Article 97. And that is in large part because of a series of votes and legislative action by the state in a series of activity between 1949 to about mid-1950s, designating the entire parcel that White Stadium sits on as a school building and not a part of and not parkland. And given that, Article 97 only applies to parkland because this is a school building and yard per state statute. Article 97 doesn't apply.
Thank you, Sammy. And then another question I had here was about the balance of concrete to green surfaces in the park. And I do wonder if, Sam, you can walk us through how much the balance that we're achieving here with the design to ensure that we're not unduly sort of introducing additional paved surfaces to the park.
I do not have that number right in front of me, but I'm digging. If it's possible, you could stall for 1 minute. I can.
I'll come back to you,
because we
Sam.
have done that math. Yes.
Great. And then a question we had here was a sort of question around the sort of future of this park and overall maintenance and operations. And I do think that Chief Irish, you answered that here with the maintenance and operational commitments that we're getting from the team that will support maintaining this facility to a professional standard over time. I also had questions with regards to tree removals and the legacy of the park, specifically, the investment and the long-term health of the tree canopy there. So I do wonder, JP, if you can speak to how some of those new, the 67 new trees that are being planted are helping to support some of that immediate loss of canopy on day one.
Certainly. The new trees proposed will, in time, replace the trees that are removed. There's no doubt that that takes time and takes years to grow to the same size. But we feel it is our responsibility to start that process now to ensure that the next generation can fill in those gaps. In terms of how much time it takes, many of the trees that that are immediately around the stadium were probably started to grow after the stadium was built. So we're talking about in the neighborhood of 75 years or so, and that is at full height. They probably reached that height in the neighborhood of 50 years or so. That is probably the time span that we are looking at for these trees to get to an equivalent size. No doubt, it takes time and patience, but if we do this effort now, which this partnership will enable, it will ensure that the next generation is ready to go. And the 500 trees that we are proposed that the partnership will provide does not mean that that investment in new trees ends there. By no means, Franklin Park needs continual maintenance of its trees, and it will continue past that initial, what that partnership provides.
Thank you, JP. And then Sam, are you ready? Because I think the last question I had here was actually about ensuring we're maintaining the feeling of the park and not introducing additional parking. So I do want to note that this is a zero parking project, so there will be no parking on site for game day spectators. There will be the parking that sort of reconfigured parking for the park visitors that exist there today, and we're just going to configure that to avoid some of the parking that happens underneath some of these trees. But there's no on-site parking. There's a really robust transportation meeting where we talked about how the transportation plan will work with different shuttles bringing folks to the site. But Sam, could you speak specifically to the sort of balance of impervious to pervious surfaces on the site?
Yes, unfortunately, I think the best way to give a hard number would be to follow up, only because there have been recent adjustments that have actually made the building a bit smaller. The pavement areas are impacted by that, and I just don't want to spread any information that's not factual. So I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you would like to email, I can follow up on that. I don't know, JP, if you're comfortable generalizing. I do want to point out that what is effectively a parking lot, including the basketball, will be removed. So while that is a large area of pavement, and of course the tennis courts, which are being shifted to the Shattuck, that is another area of pavement that will be taken offline. So while there are added accessible pathways and fire lanes, there is no large area of pavement on the Playstead that is being added back. So sorry to generalize on that. JP, if you want to chime in.
Sure. The only other thing that I would add to this discussion or this topic is that a majority of the paving materials that we are considering are permeable, not impermeable as they are now. So that is another factor to consider in these improvements, which is a much better solution for paved surfaces.
Thank you, JP.
Can I just add on to, I know that there were been a lot of meetings, a lot of engagement around transportation plan, and so there's a very thoughtful plan that was put in place. But I also want to challenge another assumption that I feel like comes up all the time, is that folks who live around the park would not want to like walk to the park to watch a soccer game. Soccer is a very thriving sport within BPS and within the Boston community. And myself live around the parks. And so I think there are a lot of people who will travel that way, but I think that a lot of effort has been put into developing a thoughtful plan for those who will come there by T or access a shuttle.
And if I could just follow up on something I said, I don't want to create confusion. As has been presented consistently, the basketball courts are being repositioned. It was specifically the paving around the basketball courts that is being removed as far as impervious surface. So there still will be basketball courts, to clarify.
Well, thank you so much to everyone tonight for your comments and thoughtful responses. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out at White Stadium at boston.gov. And again, thank you so much for taking time tonight to have this conversation with us, and we look forward to continuing to engage. Have a wonderful night, everyone.